I'm mad because the NCAA continues to act like these athletes are not employees.
Welcome into College Football Today. I'm Emily Proud. He's the coach, Carl Reed, and special guest on today's show is national college football writer from 24/7 Sports, Brandon Marcello. We'll get more into why Carl's mad in just a little bit. We got to explain, but you're going to hear these voices a lot on today's show, but we would love to hear your voice, so please be a part of the chat, and the only way that you can do that is by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, we have a goal of reaching 100 likes on today's show, so if you hear the sound of my voice, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button. We would love to hear from you. But I'm going to show you first what's on today's show because it is loaded. Today is all about the coordinators. Who's the best fit? Who's the worst? And who could be your next head coach? Plus, an unexpected coordinator hire for Billy Napier. So we head to the swamp to explain the good and the bad. But let's go back to why Carl's mad. This is, of course, in reference to the Johnson versus the NCAA case that's going on right now. A group of student athletes are arguing that NCAA athletes should be considered employees. The NCAA, of course, is standing firm in their retort, essentially saying that student athletes are amateurs because they've always been amateurs and because we say that they are amateurs. Brandon, what's your take on this?
Well, at this point, it's a losing battle for the NCAA. We saw that in the Alston case last year. And at this point, the NCAA is just trying to kind of poke holes somewhat into the lawmakers' books to see what will stick, if anything. They're trying to figure things out and what it's going to look like 5 or 10 years from now. I think the NCAA is not necessarily resigned to the idea that at some point these players will be considered employees. But I think they're trying to figure out if there's one last heave-ho that they can go about and doing is something to make this model of theirs that they've been trying to push on us for years to continue, or at the very least some type of hybrid system of it. This thing's really complicated that we need to get into further down the line, and it's going to take years to do this. But one of the key issues here is going to be Title IX. Mm-hmm. Do we pay all players across all sports equally? And if that ends up happening, at some point, the idea out there is, well, why aren't the football players or the men's basketball players getting paid more since they're bringing in more money into the university? So are these actual employees? Are they hybrid student employees? That's going to be something that's got to be decided in the courtroom. And there are going to be many lawsuits, many things that are going to have to go on for this all to get settled. But at some point, players will be paid. But I think the NCAA, as they probably should do, they're lawyering up right now, and they're kind of poking holes in everything to see what sticks and what they could do to see what this looks like in 5 to 10 years. I don't think they're sitting there thinking that they're going to completely be able to win this case and keep student athletes as amateurs.
If you have to wake up when you're told, Brandon, go to sleep when you're told, be in meetings when you're told, practice when you're told, go to tutoring when you're told, then what are you? You have to be employed. You don't make any of your own decisions when you're a student athlete at the collegiate level. Everything is forced for you to do. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have no choices to make on your own. And one of the telltale signs of, are you really an employee or not? Tell your football coach or your basketball coach that you have class for your major the same time as practice and see what happens.
Yeah, does not go over well. And that's what, the Johnson part of the Johnson versus the NCAA is arguing in this case is not necessarily that they should be paid, because we already are seeing that through NIL, but for them it's all about the control. It's the control over the student athlete. It's what Carl was just talking about. I mean, I remember when I was a student athlete is we had to sign off on literal timesheets saying how much we worked out that week, how many things we were required by our head coach to participate in, because there are structures when it comes to how many hours that you can put in. Does that not sound like an employee-employer relationship? So before we get into the Title IX issues, before we get into the how much should they be paid, who should be paying them, is it the conferences, is it the schools? Ultimately, they're saying you're signing over so much of your control as a student athlete, especially with that NLI. It's incredibly restrictive when you sign that as a high school athlete going into college. So they're saying that because of that control, there should be some more employer relationship there. But Carl, in the interim, if this case they do win it, and the NCAA loses this, it says not necessarily that they will become employees, student athletes, but that there is the opportunity for them to. So as you're looking into what it would look like if they do end up winning this case, what does it look like going forward for student athletes? What's that next step?
It's still a long battle ahead of them. That doesn't end the speculation. It doesn't end the decision. They're still going to have to get lawyers. They're going to have to go to court, and they're going to have to prove a few more things. And a lot of them are going to have a lot of ammunition from their own situations. I won't say the coach's name because he's a good friend of mine, but I've been in a situation where I've seen coaches stress how much more important the football piece was than the educational piece. I've heard a college coach tell a group of kids, if you want your education, you should have went to the Ivy League, or you should have went to Vanderbilt or Duke or Stanford, but you came to this particular university to play football and try to make it to the NFL. So when you're putting those kind of restraints on guys, when you're putting that kind of pressure on them, and when you're holding their schedule entirely, we have to be to work at certain times. We have to be in meetings at certain times. We have to do what we're told to do. They're in the same position that we're in, except they're making a ton of money for somebody else, and they're not getting any of the piece of the pie.
I believe what we're going to be talking about here in the next few years is, one, they're going to figure out a way to pay the players, and that's going to be all in the weeds. But the big argument from the NCAA and other conferences is going to be, okay, we're going to pay players, but now we got to cut some sports. We got to cut some of the women's sports, some of the smaller sports. And that gets into the Title IX issue. Is Title IX an issue that's just about the players actually being amateurs, but now that they are student athlete employees, does that tie into Title IX, and where are the legalities of that? It's going to be quite the mess. And the NCAA, I believe, is going to argue, well, these schools are going to have to cut their sports because they're not going to have enough money to sponsor them. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm telling you, that's what they're going to be arguing. And then it's going to be, okay, so if we want to keep these sports around, how much do the women's basketball players get paid compared to the football players? Does everybody get a base minimum wage salary plus benefits? What does that look like? And if that happens, then of course you're going to have the football players and men's basketball players saying, we deserve more. They're going to be separate types of player unions. I would think even by conference. There are going to be so many court battles with all this in the future. And we talk about college sports not looking the same as it does right now. I don't think we're just touching the iceberg as far as talking about how much college athletics is going to be spending time, not just on the football field and the basketball court, but also in the courtrooms.
Yeah, already is happening. And that's what happens when you sit on your hands for so long and don't do anything, is that you kind of run into the issue that they've run into right now. And as we're learning with a year and some change of NIL, clearly a scholarship is not the value of some of these high-end student athletes that we see, especially in college football and in college basketball. So interesting to see what becomes of this case. But guys, I said it, today is all about the coordinators. And we already have a question here from Andre saying, which new coordinator will have the biggest effect on their football team? He's asking this from Huntersville, North Carolina, but says, go Irish, go. So he's just a big fan of everybody. So I'll start with that first question here. And Brandon, start us off. Who's the best fit when it comes to coordinator hires this offseason?
I think it's TCU offensive coordinator Garrett Riley being hired at Clemson to take over that offense. Credit to Dabo Swinney for firing one of his guys, Brandon Streeter, after only 1 year leading that offense, to get Garrett Riley to take over that offense that needs to be revamped. He needs a guy that can go in there and scheme over their weaknesses. And their weaknesses over the last 2 to 3 years hasn't been the quarterback. I know everybody wanted to just absolutely go after DJ Uiagalelei, who's not there anymore now. But Cade Klubnik is a great quarterback. But the issue for him are the receivers and getting those guys open. But Garrett Riley comes in at a great time here for the program. They're still winning 10 games a year. They still have some talent. The issue for them last year was that the receivers were getting better, but they were still younger. Antonio Williams, a freshman, led the team with 56 catches. And then you remember this guy, Bo Collins, who we were expecting to explode last season for them, got injured. I still think he's going to be one of the top 2 receivers going into this season if he's healthy. Garrett Riley has a lot of pieces to work with. He's a fantastic offensive mind. He's going to scheme these guys open. That Clemson offense is going to take a big step forward this season. and of course, keep them in the running there in the ACC championship. And as a result, be back in the national conversation as a playoff contender.
Garrett Riley was a serious hire. I think either one of us could have picked him. The guy that I think is going to have a huge impact in a positive way on his team is Bobby Petrino with Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher was maligned all last season, highly criticized. The offense was terrible, not moving the ball around, and he was put in a position where he had to go get an offensive coordinator. One thing that guys don't understand, it's hard being an OC for a guy like Jimbo Fisher, who's still standing over the top of you every day, wanting to know what you're doing on the offensive side of the ball. You had to hire a guy that had the chops, not only to be great as an offensive coach, but the ability to give Jimbo Fisher a little bit of pushback when they don't agree on what they're doing offensively. Bobby Petrino, for everything that everybody has to say about him, is one of the greatest offensive play callers of this generation. He's been electric everywhere he's been as an offensive play caller, as a developer of quarterbacks, and I think he's going to have a huge impact on the Texas A&M offense this season.
Yeah, no, Brandon, he is your pick for another category here, so we'll dig into Bobby Petrino in just a little bit, but I want to follow up on the Clemson offensive coordinator and Garrett Riley. There was already a lot of excitement, right, about Cade Klubnik going into this season. How much more excitement is there now that he has a play caller like Garrett Riley?
I think it's huge for them because now he's got a younger offensive coordinator who's very familiar with every position on the field for him. And also, they're kind of going into this going, this is our system, our time now together. There's a lot of connections to be made there between Garrett Riley and Cade Klubnik. And Garrett Riley, from the Riley tree, they are fantastic in working with these quarterbacks. He resurrected Max Duggan from a guy who was on the bench into a Heisman finalist just in less than 3 weeks, really, on the field. I can't wait to see how these two get together in the offseason, and really we start to hear the stories about them melding this offense and what it's going to look like. So I think the two of them, Cade Klubnik and his offense coordinator, Garrett Riley, are going to kind of get together and figure out what this offense looks like before they get out on the field for preseason camp in August and September.
All right, I'm being told that only 25% of the people watching this video have hit the like button. I had to be told that because there's no way that I could possibly do that math myself. So if you hear me ask, please hit that like button. We'd like to get the ratio a little bit closer. We got a lot of people watching today. A lot of people want to talk about some of these coordinator hires. And unfortunately, when you have the best fit, there's also some fits that are probably not our favorite. So Carl, who would you consider the worst fit in the coordinator hires this offseason?
You know, when I looked at what Cincinnati did from a defensive coordinator standpoint, it didn't seem like a natural fit from a recruiting standpoint. And I think that it's a lot of pressure when you come off of how good the University of Cincinnati has been. I didn't think that was a great fit on the defensive side of the ball. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, Scott Satterfield gives you a bright light because he is going to call the offense himself. So I don't think that the offensive coordinator spot at the University of Cincinnati, like Brandon May thinks, has as big of an impact on that side of the ball because you do have a head coach who's known for calling plays. But the defensive side of the ball was a little bit of a head scratcher for me.
I hate to say this because I know several of the staffers there at Cincinnati, but the entire staff is just a wrong fit there at Cincinnati. Scott Satterfield comes on board there, pretty much brings his entire staff with them, then loses a couple of guys. And for that matter, I should say they got promotions in a lot of instances there. So kudos to them. But I just don't see the fit here. This is an inflection point for the Cincinnati football program. They're going from the small time, let's face it, to the big time in the Big 12 this upcoming season. And you're going to Scott Satterfield, who was on the outs at Louisville. The fans had turned on him over the last 2 years. He was 25-24 in his career there. His best season was his first year when he went 8-5 with Bobby Petrino's leftover players. And we didn't really see him elevate the talent around him offensively, Carl, or defensively. I was not impressed at all with the job he did there at Louisville. He was fantastic at Appalachian State, but he took a step forward in his career, and we saw him in a bigger stage struggle. So what makes us think now he's going to be able to take a Cincinnati program, now going into a Power 5 conference for the first time, and be successful there after following a legendary coach like Luke Fickell? This was one of the biggest studs in the water as far as hiring splashes this season.
Listen, you hit it right on the head. He did a great job at Appalachian State and built that program into a monster. I think Louisville was not a great fit for him. I think that was the job that he's not a great fit for. Louisville, a very tough place to win without a lot of recruiting pipeline in the state of Kentucky. Now you're going to Ohio, which is a football state. Great high school football in the state of Ohio. Scott Satterfield has forgot more about offense, Brandon, than you know. You can't criticize this man's play calling on the offensive side of the ball. He's been one of the best in the game for a long time. Offensively, he's going to score a ton of points at Cincinnati. They're going to consistently have a great quarterback to recruit. I think that he's going to be fine. I think that he's a better fit at Cincinnati than he was at Louisville. Louisville job is a job that was a Power 5 job. When you won as much as he did at Appy State, you kind of have to take what's open. That was probably the poor fit, but Cincinnati, I think he's going to do just fine.
Well, when I think of recruiting hotbeds, I think of the Appalachians. I think of going to the mountains there and recruiting to Boone, North Carolina. Secondly, Louisville, he got everything he wanted there from a recruiting standpoint. They gave him all the staff that he needed there. He complained about that behind the scenes. They hired one of the largest ACC staffs as far as off the field with recruiting. He's been pumping that thing up both publicly and privately. Their recruiting did improve, and then yet the product on the field did not improve. In fact, I would argue since year one there, it has gotten worse steadily year by year by year. There were lots of expectations even going into this season. You didn't see them live up to anything there. At some point, he's got to show improvement with his own players at Louisville. And if he was so confident that things were on the up and up and things were rising there with this new big recruiting staff and the recruiting improving, why didn't he stay there? He already has a Power 5 gig. So instead, he's going to go take over a Cincinnati program that's never been in the Power 5. He needed a fresh start.
Brandon, business is business. You know that. You know that business is business. You can't come on there and say, well, why did he take the Cincinnati job if he was so happy?
Oh, I know why he took it, because he was about to get fired.
It's a fresh set of downs. We all know that. It's a fresh set of downs.
Well, I do think the relationship with the fans had soured a little bit, right?
That's
fair to say.
Yeah. Listen, everybody's going to take the fresh set of downs on a new job when you become stagnant at the old job. That's the game. It was a brilliant move on his part to take the job at the University of Cincinnati. What are you talking about?
Brilliant to con Cincinnati to hire him. I agree. What an amazing hire, Cincy. You will not regret this in 4 years.
Hey, listen.
Wait, no. Okay, so I know the question was about the fit for Cincinnati, but what Carl's arguing is that it was a good move for Satterfield. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he was going to be fired in like 10 months. So why not go get another job and get paid a lot of money and take all your buddies with you to Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, Carl, you said it perfectly. Fresh set of downs, right? It's, the expectations probably a little bit lower since they are making the jump to the Power 5, and so interested to see.
Scott Satterfield gets a fifth down in this instance.
A fifth? Ooh, the phantom fifth down. I like it. Okay, before we break out into a huge fight, let's do under the radar coordinator hire. Carl, start us off.
The guy that I really like is Kirby Moore, that the University of Missouri hired as their offensive coordinator, coming in from Fresno State. Eli Drinkwitz makes an offensive coordinator hire here. He had been the OC himself since he's been at the University of Missouri. Tons of potential with this offense. Do you have Brady Cook returning at quarterback? But you also got Jake Garcia transferring in from the University of Miami, and you have young Sam Horn on the roster. So you're going to have a legitimate quarterback battle here, as you're going to have three guys on campus that you're pretty confident can do it. Kirby Moore is also going to have some tools at the wide receiver position. Luther Burton is back for his sophomore year. Some tools here offensively. Missouri's schedule is light up front. Missouri could start off this year. Listen to this. 5-0. The Missouri Tigers have the schedule this year to start off 5-0, and then they would have a home game against LSU in Columbia. And if Missouri is 5-0 with LSU coming to town, it will be rocking in Columbia. I'm really excited about the Kirby Moore hire. I think it's going to do big things this year at the University of Missouri.
Give me Arizona State's entire staff. I know I'm on this kick of just picking entire
The whole
staffs,
staff.
but they're doing it family style out there. They just compiled one of the best staffs in context, considering all the NCAA issues they're dealing with off field. It's amazing that Kenny Dillingham is the youngest FBS Power 5 head coach out there, was able to build the staff he did, considering the cloud that's over that program. You hire 3 legendary high school coaches in the Valley there in Arizona, Sean Aguano, Jason Mons, Charlie Raggle, who won a combined 14 state titles there. They are going to own the state of Arizona in recruiting, and they're going to own the Valley. Add into that Brian Carrington, who was at SMU previously and TCU behind the scenes and was getting rave reviews as a recruiter. He teams back up with his partner in crime, Rashad Samples, who was with him at SMU and was the Los Angeles Rams running backs coach just this past season, to form one of the best dynamic duos in recruiting out west. And then Kenny Dillingham was able to raid the Pac-12 and get Brian Ward, the defensive coordinator at Washington State. The staff he built there was fantastic. You're already seeing the fruits of that labor there. They got quarterback Jaden Rashada, who had all those issues at Florida trying to get out of his NIL deal. He might be the quarterback of the future there. Heck, he might be the starting quarterback this fall as a 4-star prospect. I love this hire by Arizona State, and I love the job that Kenny Dillingham did in putting this staff together, considering the context, considering the NCAA cloud around them, all the transfers they were able to add, 28 guys and counting right now, the recruiting class they did in just several weeks. This is the best staff built this entire offseason.
Like it. That was convincing. And I 100% agree. I'm excited to see what they do out there. And you guys are talking about all of these great coordinator hires and what they're adding to their programs. But I want to know straight up, like, which program gets the best year one bump based on some of their coordinator hires? Brandon, what do you think?
I think it's Texas A&M and Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino, as Carl said, this guy is a genius. I don't throw that term around lightly. And as I wrote in my own piece, I'm not Jimmy Fallon of sports writers out here. I'm not just going to say he's a genius to say it. I'm not calling everybody that. I covered him at Arkansas on a local level. He gave coaches, Nick Saban in particular, headaches on his opening script every single year. First 7 to 11 plays, Nick Saban was frustrated. Talent won in at the end, but he elevated Arkansas, he elevated Louisville, he elevated Western Kentucky, he elevated Auburn way back when he was an offensive coordinator for a year. He is going to immediately upgrade things there at Texas A&M with a scoring offense that was 97th last season and a third down offense that was in the triple digits. They are going to be a top 25 offense this year. They lead the entire SEC in returning production this year with 82% of the returning production. And remember, they ended the regular season by upsetting number 5 LSU. And 19 of those 22 starters in that game for Texas A&M return this season. A&M's offense was antiquated. It was slow. Bobby Petrino's power spread is going to speed it up a little bit, but more importantly, he's a schemer. He can see the field. He actually has a photographic memory. This guy is going to be a great short-term fix for A&M, and they're going to go to a 5 or 6 win team, as we saw this last year, to contending for 10 wins here in 2023.
When I look at the University of Colorado, it's been a lot of emphasis around Deion Sanders and the way he's recruited, the culture and the excitement. But he was very excited about getting Charles Kelly to come from Alabama to be his defensive coordinator, from the culture, from the way he prepares, from the way that he looks at things, and the position that he's going to put players in. When you think about signing guys like Cormani McClain, when you think about having a guy like Travis Hunter at corner, when we talk about the recruits that they're bringing in, Charles Kelly was a huge hire for him that he was very excited about, and he's getting rave reviews so far at the University of Colorado. The players love him, highly organized, coming from Nick Saban tree. Then when you look across the offensive side of the ball, getting Sean Lewis to leave the head coaching job at Kent State to come tutor Shedeur Sanders, and the offensive side of the ball was another huge hire for the University of Colorado. I think they hit the jackpot with both of those coordinators, and they're going to have a huge return on investment when they get their win total up to being around bowl eligibility this year. I think that Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly at the University of Colorado, big things ahead for those two coordinators.
We are 4 likes away from 50, so please hit that like button. 130 people are watching right now. Again, I don't know the percentage, but it's pretty low, so please hit that like button if you're watching. Are you calculating it, Brandon?
I
Can you tell me what it is?
I'm
okay. No, but yes, 4 likes away from 50, so hit that like button. Carl, I want to know how many wins. How many more wins Colorado getting this year?
I think they're going to get 5 more. I think they'll go to a bowl game this year with 6 wins.
Ooh, Brandon, what do you think?
I agree with Carl. They'll get to a bowl game this year, and it's going to be the greatest story to watch them week to week. And I'm telling you, watch out in that first month of the season with TCU.
Ooh.
TCU is something there, and man, talk about Deion prime time making a big splash immediately. They beat it at TCU. They're going to be the story of college football early in the season.
I like it. As it pertains, though, to Texas A&M, we assume that Jimbo Fisher puts away the millions of papers that he has when he's calling offense. He lets Petrino do his thing. They have the talent. You talked about the returning talent, Brandon. They were 93rd in total offense last year. How big a bump? Again, if Petrino is in charge, taking the reins, how much better can this offense be for Texas A&M next season?
I think they'll be a top 25 offense. Scoring will be in the top 25. I think in passing, offense will probably improve to the top 30. And I see them being a much more efficient red zone team, which is going to be so crucial to their success against the likes of an LSU and maybe even an Auburn, as Auburn kind of rebounds a little bit this upcoming season. Those are the two programs they've got to kind of fend off this upcoming year to battle to be a 9 or 10 win team this year. And Bobby Petrino is going to be the difference for them. And you mentioned Jimbo putting away those papers. He'll have to, because I'm telling you, Bobby Petrino would not have gone there unless he was told he's going to have full control of that offense. And trust me, if he doesn't have full control by week 3 or week 4, Petrino is probably just going to resign and step away completely because he's not going to put up with that crap.
Along those lines. Wait, Carl, I got a question for you. James here in the chat is right on cue with Brandon saying that Bobby P is a good coach, but he is hard-headed, and I don't think his personality matches with Jimbo. I think it's a disaster long term. Carl, what do you think? You know what it's like, those coaches and their personalities.
This isn't about personalities. This is about winning football games. A lot of coaches don't have personalities that click, but this is a results-driven business. Jimbo knew he had to give up the offense. Bobby Petrino would not have come if there was not an agreement that he was going to be able to call the offense. And if they have an issue, I'm sure that somebody can drop a cage at the 50-yard line and they can settle it for 3 minutes and get back to calling offense.
Okay. I hope that doesn't. I don't know. I kind of hope, I don't know. That would be interesting to see how it happens. All right, guys, our last question here is, of all the coordinator hires that we discussed and that have happened in this offseason, all the people that are, fans of teams that didn't have a coordinator hire, maybe not too happy with their head coach, all the hot seat talk. Which one of these guys is the next head coach, Brandon?
Oh, Garrett Riley at Clemson. He's going to be a head coach potentially as early as this time next year and potentially at the Power 5 level, though I think he'll be a group of 5 coach first. He's got all the ingredients to be a head coach. You speak to everybody that's around him. That's his goal. You speak to the coach alongside him. They believe he's going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. He's a fantastic organizer of his offense. He's a player coach. He listens to them. He also has a very level head. Rarely does he get hot-headed and everything. He's a little bit like his brother in some instances, but I think as far as just being a CEO type, he's got that pedigree in him. I think at this time next year, if Clemson gets into the playoff this year, or even just gets into consideration near the end of the year, and it's because of that offense of Garrett Riley's, I think Garrett Riley will be in the conversation to be a head coach at a group of 5 school, and he'll end up taking that job because that's what he wants to do.
I agree with you here, Brandon. I think it's got to be Garrett Riley. He has the pedigree. He's taken a team offense all the way to the national title game, gets the big opportunity to sit in an elite chair at Clemson with a quarterback who can get it done. I think that Dabo is going to do a good job at facilitating and allowing him to do what he did with when they had Tony Elliott and some of the other guys and Chad Morris that called the offense. Obviously, he's Lincoln Riley's brother, but he has been able to develop his own identity as well, which I know has got to be important to him. One thing I'm going to disagree with you on, he's the offensive coordinator at Clemson. I don't think he goes for a group of 5 job. I think that he's in a position that he can continue to build on that offensive success until he can get a really good Power 5 job that has an opportunity to win their conference. I think he'll have his pick of those if he has the production that he had at TCU.
Man, I'm so glad that you said that, because I wanted to ask about this trend that we're starting to see where lower level head coaches are leaving their jobs to become coordinators at the Power 5 position. You mentioned Sean Lewis, Bobby Petrino, another one as well. So Brandon, in your estimation, why do you think that we're starting to see this trend of opting to not be a head coach, but to be a coordinator in the Power 5?
There's multiple reasons. One big reason is it's easier to become a head coach in coordinating a top-tier offense in the Power 5, number one. Secondly, the salaries are just not very good on the group of 5 level, especially in the MAC. And we're seeing a lot of MAC coaches becoming offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators at bigger programs. And in fact, there were a couple more coaches in the MAC this season who were in consideration for some big jobs as OCs. Joe Moorhead, the head coach at Akron, was in the conversations to be the OC at Alabama, but that didn't end up happening. Miami was talking to Jason Candle, the head coach at Toledo, about becoming the offensive coordinator there. So you're seeing these type of movements, and it's not the first time this hadn't happened, and it won't be the last time. Heck, Dan Enos, almost a decade ago, left as a head coach in the MAC to become an offensive coordinator in the SEC. So this is a bigger opportunity for a lot of these guys to be considered Power 5 head coaches in the future, to be coordinators in the Power 5 level rather than being head coaches on the group of 5 level, and particularly in the MAC, which is crazy to think considering how entertaining and successful a lot of these head coaches have been in the MAC.
You have to look at the money first and foremost. The money makes a big difference with everybody. And not only are you making more money, you're making more money for a lot less responsibility in terms of the job that the head coach has to do on a day in and day out basis. So when you look at financially what guys are making in the MAC and maybe in the Sun Belt compared to what the OCs and DCs are making in the SEC, ACC, those Big Ten, those now positions at the coordinator spots are pretty much $1 million positions across the board. Some guys are making upwards of $2, close to $3 million to coordinate those sides of the ball. So the money is the first thing. The second thing, when you add in the transfer portal, group of 5 schools have become a breeding ground for having players that succeed, and then they move on to Power 5 because they want to be on a bigger stage. So you have to think of the exhaustion of a group of 5 head coach that has identified a kid that's below the radar. He has spent 2 years recruiting them, develops them, comes in and turns them into a really good college player, and then somebody with the bigger logo can just come in and scoop them up. And that's also mentally exhausting to those coaches at that level. So you're going to see more and more of that, but those to me are the 2 biggest reasons and identifying factors why you see group of 5 coaches going to be coordinators at the Power 5 level.
Can I interrupt here related to this?
Yeah.
Look at Western Kentucky. It's amazing to me they've been as successful as they have been the last 2 years. They have lost 12 assistant coaches in the last 2 hiring cycles, right? Tyson Helton's remained there as the head coach. They have lost a boatload of players to the transfer portal because of their success the last 2 years. They're leading receivers, they're leading quarterbacks, and yet they're still winning games there. Kudos to Tyson Helton for being able to win games that way. But that's a case in point right there of why would you stay when your best guys that you developed, you recruited, are leaving? As a head coach, what does that do for you in 2 or 3 years down the line? It's an incredibly, very difficult job to have nowadays at a group of 5 program.
Yep, certainly. All right, guys. Well, speaking of coordinators, I told you today was all about the coordinators, and our next story is continuing that trend here. Billy Napier unexpectedly having a hole to fill at the DC position is Patrick Toney and tight ends coach William Piegler both leaving to join the Arizona Cardinals staff. Now, Napier, though, moved pretty quickly, hiring Alabama inside linebackers coach Austin Armstrong to be the Gators defensive coordinator. And when it's time to talk Gators, there's only one place we go, and that is, of course, to the Swamp. And we welcome in our next guest here, and that is Jacob Rudner of Swamp 247. Jacob, how you doing? Oh, I don't know if we have audio. Do we have audio for Jacob? I'm not hearing him. Well, hopefully we get audio for Jacob. Oh, there you are.
I can hear you guys. Yeah, it's good. It's good to be here.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it's important that we hear you as well. So I'm glad that we got your audio working. So first off, I mean, new hire here. What are your thoughts?
I like the move. He's young, 29 years old, was the youngest defensive coordinator in FBS football when he was at Southern Mississippi, but he was very successful there. Those defenses ranked quite highly in their ability to generate sacks on 3rd and 4th downs. And those are things that Florida really needed to improve on. So I think the move has a lot of promise. Obviously, there comes some risk with hiring such a young and inexperienced coordinator. But at the end of the day, this was an unexpected vacancy created on Florida's coaching staff, and they had to make a move. So Billy Napier went with somebody who is young, who is promising, and somebody who he's familiar with as well.
Yeah, certainly there is the connection there. Also, if you want to make our friend Jacob feel nice and welcome and right at home, hit that like button. We are 2 away from 60. And again, I can't do the math, but I can do enough to tell you that less than half the people watching right now have hit that like button. So please smash it. And I'm going to ask this next question, though, to Brandon, because I know that you were all over this story. What were your initial reactions when you saw the move that Billy Napier made?
Yeah, not too surprising because of the connections there. They both coached together at Louisiana previously, and then they both come from a Nick Saban kind of tree. You saw Austin Armstrong get hired away from Southern Miss as the coordinator there to Alabama to be the inside linebackers coach. But Austin Armstrong was kind of sitting and waving in the wind for a couple of weeks at Alabama because he didn't know what position he was going to coach. He didn't know who his boss was going to be at defensive coordinator. And then they hired Kevin Steele away, a guy that he had never really met before. So he was in a situation, yes, he's going to be groomed by Nick Saban and by everybody I've been told was probably going to be the next DC in line there at Alabama. But now he gets to go run his own show and do it maybe a few years earlier than he expected. So why not go and take it? It might be a little bit of a risk, sure, especially for him, but he's young right now. He could bounce back from it. He's only 29 years old. It's going to be very fascinating to watch. And listen, Nick Saban was praising the heck out of Austin Armstrong during the season. Remember, Alabama faced Southern Miss previously, and he was saying that they had an SEC type of defense when they faced them. Their run defense was top 10 at that time in the season. And then, as Jacob mentioned, the sack production, top 4 in the country. They were getting pressure on the quarterback and stopping the run. That's how you win in the SEC. It's a good hire.
Austin Armstrong, one of the young stars in coaching, rave reviews from everybody who's been around him. But this is also a relationship business. Has an incredible relationship in history with Billy Napier. A lot of people today were talking about the timing of it and how it had hurt Florida losing their defensive coordinator at this point in the season. He moved on Austin Armstrong so quick. It makes me wonder, did he kind of nudge a couple guys out so he can get the guy in that he really wanted anyway in Austin Armstrong? So you never know with these moves and what happens, but he got his guy. That's the guy that he's going to take to the party with him as they look to turn the Florida Gators back into a national championship contender. And we know that is the expectation in Gainesville.
Yeah, so you hear the high praise from Brandon saying that it's coming from Nick Saban and that he has an SEC type defense, and you hear all the stats and Saban thinking that he could be the future at Alabama. Obviously, now that he goes to the Swamp, that is not in the cards at the moment. But Jacob, is he ready right now to be a defensive coordinator in the SEC?
I think only time will tell, honestly. This is kind of one of those situations where it's going to be trial by fire. Like Brandon said, he does not have a lot of experience. There is no defensive coordinator experience on his resume. But that being said, there is, the track record is there in terms of what he was able to do at Southern Mississippi. Like Brandon said, Nick Saban has been high in his praise on this hire. And so I think that it could go a long way for Florida. That being said, there's going to be no way to know exactly how good he is until games start being played. I do like the potential for the move, though.
Jacob, for me, I mean, Florida's been in the crosshairs across college football for most of this offseason. When we talk about the Jaden Rashada saga, NIL, and for a lot of reasons, recruiting is being steered by NIL these days. I'm wondering, what does the situation look like there in Gainesville now with NIL, with the collectives there? Are they getting better on the same page? What does the future look like for that as they try to improve the recruiting effort?
Brandon, I would be lying if I said it was entirely clear at this time. I think that there are still a lot of questions to be answered. I think that Florida needs to still try and figure out exactly who's going to run its collective. There have been rumors. Perhaps there could be a change in leadership after the recent Jaden Rashada saga. If that happens, it'll be interesting to see exactly in which direction they go. But Billy Napier said on signing day in February that NIL remains a strength at the University of Florida, and there's no reason necessarily to dispute that other than what we've seen so far. Jaden Rashada does not end up at the University of Florida. For whatever reasons throughout his process, things don't go right. Florida still was able, though, to lock up a top 15 class in the country, several highly regarded prospects. Their transfer class was quite good, especially on both sides of the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensive line. I'll be interested to see, though, how things look in the 2024 recruiting cycle. Are there other hiccups? Are there reasons to be concerned in terms of, are they able to bring in the top level talent, which, as we know, is at least partially dependent on NIL? I don't have any reason to think that Billy Napier and the people around him are not going to solve the problems that they encountered in this last cycle. But to say it's not something to keep an eye on would be a lie. It definitely is a topic that we'll have to watch moving forward here.
And Carl mentioned just how much of a relationship business it is. So I'm curious, you're there. What is the relationship like between Billy Napier in Florida and the collectives there that you kind of have to work with?
Yeah, I think it's going well for the most part. I mean, it would be, it would be difficult to say that there wasn't some strain put on the situation based on the Jaden Rashada situation. That stressed people out. Billy Napier has a five-star, fringe five-star, four-star quarterback locked into his recruiting class. It's somebody that they're counting on, and that guy doesn't end up on campus. So do I think that could be, a hot-button topic moving forward for the university? Sure. But do I think that it's strained any relationships beyond repair? No. I think that Florida is in a position where they're going to have to move forward quickly. Billy Napier said that they're planning on pursuing they're going to target a transfer quarterback in this upcoming cycle in the spring. And so we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. But as far as, is there, a tenuous relationship between Napier and Florida? No, I don't think so.
All right. Speaking of Billy Napier, it's been a hectic offseason, to say the least, and of course having to go to the well and hire a new defensive coordinator. But that's why we brought Jacob in to tell us exactly what is going on down in the swamp. But we actually have a clip from earlier, about a month ago. We talked about Billy Napier and just what that relationship was like with the fan base right now. Because as we know, these standards and the expectations are as high as ever at Florida. And that's, what you sign up for when you go to a place like Florida. So let's roll the clip about what our friend Carl Reed had to say.
Nobody has given their coach more smoke than the Florida Gators fan base. They are really all over Billy Napier. And I don't understand why. I guess, they lost a couple of recruits. Florida Gators expect to win national championships. But I think that Billy Napier is going to get that thing rolling and get it going in a good direction. But, man, his fans are all over him. I don't get it. You got to give a guy some time. You got to let him get a couple of his recruiting classes in. But we are in an age where nobody wants to give everybody time. Everybody wants it in the microwave. Nobody wants to wait on the oven anymore to heat it up.
Man, it says January 25th, but that was black and white video. That apparently was from way, way back in the day. So, Carl, I'll ask you, with today's latest news, you still agree with the man that was in the video?
Well, yeah, I think that you need to give him some time, but I'm not the person who's going to ultimately make the decision. When you wake up and you decide you want to be a football coach, and this is something for all the boys and the girls to know, you want to coach football, you're going to win or you're going to get fired. That's the game. Nobody knows that better than the guys that are coaching. Billy Napier passed up on a few SEC jobs because he wanted a job where he felt like he can compete for national championships. That's the Florida Gators. They have a history of winning championships. Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, you're going to get a statue built or you're going to lose your job. That's the stakes. Then this is the life that you choose when you want to go coach football at that level. You get paid handsomely for it. There's a lot of pressure on coaches who know they have to win. There's coaches all over the country right now that aren't sleeping well, that aren't eating well, because they know they have to win football games or they're going to get fired. And everybody knows that losers are all different, but winners are all the same. And so you have to make a decision what category you're going to be in. Some guys get all the breaks and they win. Some guys don't get any breaks and they lose. Hey, you get a nice parting gift. You get to walk with 30, 40, $50 million in most cases if you don't win. But this is what you signed up for. They expect national championships, and you got to get them moving in that right direction if you want to remain the head football coach.
The pressure's never been higher at Florida, and for that matter, across college football. My friends at Football Scoop track all this, the hirings and firings, as well as we do. And the average start date for all FBS coaches that are head coaches right now is 2020. The lifespan of a head coach is shorter than ever in college football. And for Billy Napier, that means he's got to get things rolling here the next 2 years, or he might be out of a job after year 3. That's just the nature of the business. And for that matter, the nature of the business for these administrators. They're tied to the hip with these head coaches nowadays. So Scott Strickland knows he's got to get something out of Billy Napier these next couple of years, or he could maybe even be in trouble with his job. But the good news for Florida is that the recruiting has been there. There's still been top 15, as Jacob mentioned. But the problem is can you get in that top 10? Can you take that next step? Can you get in the top 5? And so, listen, Billy Napier has one more spot remaining as of right now on that staff after William Peagler left for the Arizona Cardinals as tight ends coach. Can he get a guy that's like a killer on the recruiting trail to kind of amp things up a little bit further for them? That'll be interesting to watch. And I think he upgraded at defensive coordinator by hiring Austin Armstrong. Patrick Toney took over the defense there. They were bad last season, couldn't get to the quarterback. They were inconsistent. They were in the 90s in a lot of categories in the rankings. They will get better this year because of the returning talent they have and the influx of talent they've got coming in. And I have a lot of confidence in Austin Armstrong. Yes, he's 29 years old, but look at the numbers his defense as coordinator put up at Southern Miss. It was, in Nick Saban's words, an SEC-type defense. I can't wait to see what Florida does this year.
We have 160 people watching and just about 75 likes, so please hit that like button. We're trying to reach 100 by the end of the show. Brandon, you talk about the rope that the Billy Napier has. Rudner, in your eyes, what you see down in the swamp between the fan base and Billy Napier, how long is that rope amongst the fan base?
Look, I don't know that I could say it much better than Brandon or Carl did. I think that it's all about progress, and progress determines the size of that rope. And I don't know that we can really fairly determine that based on just year 1 results. Sure, they finished under 500, and that's very disappointing for this fan base, and it should be. They expect wins, and they deserve wins. But I think that we need to see still what's going to happen when Billy Napier gets his personnel in place with his new defensive coordinator, whom he's familiar with. What he does at the tight end coaching position. These are all things that are going to determine exactly how long that rope is and what the expectations are moving forward. One thing, though, I know is for certain is we need to see progress in year 2. The win total needs to increase. I think that the recruiting needs to improve, like Brandon said. Can Billy Napier get into the top 10 or the top 5 with his upcoming class? And what does that turn into on the field? That's what matters at the end of the day. I believe that Billy Napier will demonstrate improvement. There are a lot of people around Gainesville who are confident in him still, and they should be. So we'll have to see. But I do think that things aren't looking in the wrong direction right now in Gainesville. I do still have confidence that Billy Napier will put this together.
Yeah, we'd be
how much rope does a guy have in a week, Emily? Every fan base in the SEC is 1 week.
Yeah.
That's the rope that everybody has. If you're a head coach in the SEC and you lose, your fan base wants you fired. If Alabama loses, Saban is too old. If Hyper loses, they don't play enough defense. I don't care what the fan base is. 1 week is all the patience that an SEC fan base has. But maybe that's why they say it just means more in the South.
They need to spend this entire spring and summer at Florida figuring out the collective there for NIL. That has been a mess, and for whatever reason, they can't get on the same page, and it keeps getting pumped up as a strength for them by Billy Napier, but it's very clearly not, because it's been embarrassing, all the stuff that's been getting out from Jaden Rashada and even stuff beyond that. They've got to get on the same page with that, and if they do, recruiting actually will improve just for getting that in line. They've got to figure that all out.
Too many cooks in the kitchen for the NIL collective with the Florida Gators. Too many guys trying to be in charge. It has been shameful, Brandon. A lot of names involved. We don't need to air the names out on the show, but they do have to be able to get some type of working order going to get that thing, or they're going to kill the future of their football program if they don't figure that out.
Along those lines of the NIL and collectives, this is obviously a new problem that coaches are having to deal with, Billy Napier in particular, with everything that's going on there. Not to mention the state of Florida football and the Power Five has never been better with what Florida State is doing on the recruiting trail, what Miami is doing on the recruiting trail. Not to mention they added a Power Five school in the state this year with UCF jumping up to the Big 12. So, Jacob, from your perspective, I mean, how are the external factors that Napier is dealing with now, how are they different than maybe what Dan Mullen had to deal with as head coach at Florida?
Well, it's been what we've talked about mostly for the show. I think that NIL is the biggest factor in terms of something that Billy Napier has to deal with right now, that Dan Mullen either didn't have to deal with at all or had to deal with in a much smaller capacity than Billy Napier has to deal with right now. Florida just made a change in legislature that allows coaches to get involved in the NIL discussions. I think that will help. I think that, like Brandon and Carl said, too many cooks in the kitchen right now with Florida's NIL. But as I said earlier, it sounds like there will be changes made to the structure of the Gator Collective. Plus, one thing that I think will truly help them out is being able to have involvement from the school side of things in order to be able to kind of dictate what happens and facilitate all of these transactions to some degree. What exactly that looks like, I don't know. I think that we're all kind of learning on the fly here, but I do think that that would be a benefit to the team. So does Billy Napier have to deal with something that Dan Mullen didn't in NIL? Yes, but I actually think that that could be to his benefit as we move forward here.
As long as it is done in the right way. All right, it's time for our College Football Today takeaway. Carl, start us off.
Well, one of my biggest takeaways is that me and Brandon Marcello agreed on a lot of topics today, and I wasn't expecting that. I had my boxing gloves on. I was able to take them off, and Brandon is really, really lucky for that.
Brandon, I'll let you go next. What's your takeaway?
Well, my takeaway is something that happened off the show, but the month of March is very important for the Pac-12, and so is April. So I'm wondering if things might look a little bit different at the Pac-12, say, come in May. So April showers bring May flowers. Something might be blooming there into the Pac-12 once they figure out their TV deal. I think a lot of schools, especially those corner schools, are waiting to see and hear what this TV deal looks like. And then in May, you might hear some rumblings and grumblings from some of those schools.
Jacob, what's your final takeaway from today's show?
I'm going to go with Billy Napier took a step in the right direction today. I think that his hiring of, the defensive coordinator hiring that was made was really promising in my opinion. I think that this team took a step in the right direction. I like the way that he recruited the transfer portal. I still like his transfer class, sans Jaden Rashada. I think things are looking up in Gainesville, and today was another day of positivity. So my takeaway is that things are looking good, although we need to see exactly what happens, but things are looking good in Gainesville.
I like it. All right. My final takeaway is something also that didn't happen on this show, but just the savagery that's happening in the chat right now. Do you know they're doing polls running who they like who the fans like better in the show right now? The question was, who do you think is doing better on the show today? It was between Carl Reed and Brandon Marcello. And I hate this because Carl's takeaway was how you guys are friends. And now I'm just about to divide you. I'll tell you the results of the poll. Carl got 57% of the votes. Brandon Marcello got 42, and there was a write-in for me, so I appreciate that.
Just win,
that came
baby.
from Don. Just win. I know.
Just win,
I
baby.
can't believe that they would ask these questions. I don't do it, guys. I just watch and enjoy. But I hope you guys have all enjoyed the chat as well. If you're wondering where the heck is the chat, it's because you need to be subscribed to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel to be a part of it. Thank you for being a part of today's show. We are here every Monday and Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. Everybody enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you next week.